My beloved child, stop right where you are. I know what you carry in the silence of your own mind. I know the memories you replay when no one else is around, the moments you wish you could erase, the version of yourself you are most ashamed of. I know the things you have never told anyone, not your closest friend, not your family, perhaps not even in your most honest prayers. I know the weight of carrying a secret that you believe, if anyone truly knew, would change the way they see you forever. I see all of it, my child, and I have come to speak directly into that hidden place today. You did not arrive at this message by accident. I have been watching the way shame has shaped your life, the way it has kept you from fully receiving love, because some part of you believes you do not deserve it. The way it has kept you at arm's length from intimacy, from community, from me, because you are convinced that if people got close enough, they would eventually see the truth and walk away. The way it has colored every good thing that has happened to you with an undercurrent of unworthiness, a quiet voice that says, "You do not deserve this, it will not last. Eventually they will find out who you really are." I have heard that voice running underneath your life for a long time, and today I am here to silence it permanently. I need you to understand something before we go any further. Shame and guilt, while they often travel together, are not the same thing. Guilt says, "I did something wrong." Shame says, "I am something wrong." Guilt can be a healthy and even useful signal, pointing you toward repentance and change. But shame is corrosive. It does not just address your actions, it attacks your very identity. It tells you that you are fundamentally flawed, fundamentally unworthy, fundamentally disqualified from the love and the future that I have for you. And I want you to know clearly, shame was never something I gave you. I do not deal in shame. I deal in conviction that leads to freedom, not condemnation that leads to hiding. The shame you carry did not come from me, even when it has attached itself to things I genuinely care about, like sin and brokenness and the mistakes you have made. I know what it costs to carry shame the way you have been carrying it. It costs you intimacy, because you cannot let people fully in without risking exposure. It costs you joy, because shame has a way of sabotaging good moments with the fear that they cannot last. It costs you the freedom to dream, because part of you believes you have forfeited the right to a good future. And it costs you closeness with me, because shame is the single greatest barrier to approaching my presence with confidence. You hide, the way Adam hid in the garden, covering yourself and retreating into the shadows, believing that distance from me is safer than exposure. But my child, I am not calling you out of the shadows to condemn you. I am calling you out because I already know everything, and I am still calling you toward me, not away. So stay here with me. I know that even reading these words stirs something uncomfortable. The old instinct to deflect, to minimize, to change the subject before the conversation gets too close to the things you have buried. I am not asking you to expose your specific story to the world. I am asking you to let me into the place you have kept hidden, even from yourself. Because what I am about to say to you has the power to dismantle shame at its root. And that kind of freedom is worth every uncomfortable moment it takes to get there. My child, I want to go into the specific story of how shame took root in you, because shame rarely arrives without a history. It has an origin, and understanding that origin is part of the path toward freedom from it. For some of you, the shame began with something you did, a choice you made, a relationship you should not have entered, words you spoke that wounded someone you loved, a betrayal, an addiction, a failure so significant that it became the lens through which you began to see your entire identity. You have carried that choice like a brand, believing it marks you permanently, believing it is the truest thing about who you are. For others of you, the shame did not begin with something you did. It began with something that was done to you. Abuse that was never your fault, but that left you believing you were somehow responsible, somehow complicit, somehow marked by what happened. Rejection that taught you there was something inherently unlovable about you. Words spoken over you by people who should have built you up. Parents, teachers, partners. Words that became the soundtrack of your inner voice long after the people who spoke them were gone from your life. You did not choose this shame. It was placed on you by people who had no right to define you, and yet you have carried it as though it were a verdict you deserved. I want to address both kinds of shame, because they require different things from me, even though the healing I offer covers them both completely. For the shame that comes from your own choices and failures, the shame of sin, of mistakes, of the things you wish you had never done, I want you to hear this clearly. I already paid the full price for every one of those things. Not partially. Not contingent on you somehow making up for it through extra effort or self-punishment. Completely and finally, on the cross, I carried the full weight of every sin you have ever committed or ever will commit, and I declared it finished. There's no remaining balance. There is no probationary period where you have to prove you deserve forgiveness before it becomes valid. The forgiveness is already yours. The question is not whether I have forgiven you. I have. The question is whether you will receive what I have already given. For the shame that was placed on you by others, the shame of abuse, of rejection, of cruelty you did not deserve, I want to speak with particular tenderness, because this is some of the deepest and most unjust suffering a human being can carry. What was done to you was wrong. It was not your fault. The shame you feel about it does not belong to you. It belongs to the person who caused the harm, and I am asking you today to stop carrying weight that was never yours to bear. I see every detail of what happened to you. I was present in the room, in the moment, in the aftermath, even when it did not feel like it. And I am telling you now, you are not what was done to you. You are not defined by someone else's sin against you. You are my child, and what happened to you, while it was real, and while it caused real damage, does not have the final word over your identity. I do. I want to speak to a particular and painful category of shame that many of you carry silently. Shame about thoughts, desires, or struggles that feel too dark or too strange to ever speak out loud. The intrusive thoughts that frighten you. The desires that contradict who you want to be. The addictions that feel impossible to break, that you have tried to overcome 100 times and failed 100 times. Each failure deepens the shame and the conviction that you are simply broken beyond repair in this particular area. My child, I want to tell you that none of this disqualifies you from my love or my presence. I am not surprised by your struggle. I am not put off by your darkness. I have seen every thought you have ever had, and I have not withdrawn from you because of a single one of them. My love was never based on the absence of struggle. It was always based on who I am, and who I am does not change based on what I find when I look at you. I want to name the specific lies that shame has been speaking over you, because they are sophisticated, and they are persistent, and they will not loosen their grip until they are directly confronted with truth. Shame does not announce itself loudly. It works in whispers, in assumptions, in the quiet background narration that runs underneath your conscious thoughts, and I want to bring each one into the light. The first lie is that you are defined by the worst thing you have ever done, that your past failures are the truest, most accurate representation of who you are, more real than any good you have done, more real than my declaration over you. My child, you are not your worst moment. You are not the sum total of your failures. I do not define people by the worst thing they have ever done. If I did, none of my most celebrated servants throughout history would have qualified for anything. David was an adulterer and a murderer, and I called him a man after my own heart. Paul persecuted and killed Christians before he became the greatest missionary the church has ever known. Peter denied me 3 times in my darkest hour, and I built my church on him anyway. Your worst moment is not your identity. It is a moment. And moments, however significant, do not get to write the final chapter of your story when I am the author. The second lie is that if people truly knew you, the real you, the hidden you, the you behind the carefully managed exterior, they would reject you. This lie keeps you in a permanent state of guardedness, performing an acceptable version of yourself, while the real you remains hidden and unloved. But my child, I already know everything. There is no version of you that I have not already seen. I know your thoughts before you think them. I know your failures before you commit them. I know the things you have done that you have never told a living soul. And I have not rejected you. I have not turned away. I have not revoked my love or my call on your life. If the God who knows everything about you has not rejected you, the fear that a human being's knowledge of you would result in rejection is not a fear based in truth. It is a fear based in shame, and shame is a liar. The third lie is that shame is somehow productive, that feeling bad about yourself, punishing yourself internally, refusing to fully receive joy or blessing, is somehow appropriate penance for what you have done. This lie disguises itself as humility or accountability, but it is neither. Shame does not produce repentance. It produces hiding. It does not lead to change. It leads to paralysis. The cycle of shame and self-punishment that you may have been engaging in for years has not made you a better person. It has simply kept you stuck, exhausted, and disconnected from the very grace that has the power to actually transform you. Conviction leads to growth. Shame leads to death. And I am calling you out of the cycle of shame into the freedom of grace, which is the only soil in which real change can actually grow. The fourth lie is that you have to clean yourself up before you can come to me. That you need to get your life in order, break the habit, fix the pattern, achieve a certain level of moral performance before you are qualified to approach my presence with confidence. My child, this lie has the order of the gospel completely backwards. You do not get clean and then come to me. You come to me, and I get you clean. I did not wait for humanity to be sinless before I sent my Son. I came precisely because humanity was not sinless, because that was the entire point. You do not need to fix yourself before approaching me. You need to approach me so that the fixing can begin. Come as you are. Not as you wish you were. As you actually are, in this exact moment, with everything you are currently carrying. The fifth lie, perhaps the deepest of all, is that your shame somehow makes you exceptional, that your specific failure or your specific story is uniquely disqualifying in a way that other people's struggles are not. You look at others who have been forgiven, who have moved forward, who seem to have left their past behind, and some part of you believes that grace is for them, but my situation is different. My failure is worse. My story is the exception to the rule of God's mercy. My child, there is no exception. There has never been an exception. The same grace that covers every other person's sin covers yours completely, fully, without qualification. You are not a unique case study in unforgivability. You are simply another beloved child who needs to receive what has already been freely given. My beloved, I want to speak now about how this freedom actually becomes real in your daily life, not just as a concept you agree with intellectually, but as a lived reality that changes the way you move through the world. Because believing the truth about your forgiveness and beginning to actually live free of shame are two different things, and I want to walk you through the bridge between them. The first step is bringing the hidden thing into the light, not necessarily to the entire world, but to me, and ideally to at least one trusted person who can hold it with you. Shame thrives in secrecy. It loses much of its power the moment it is spoken aloud in a safe space. I am not asking you to publish your deepest failures on a billboard. I am asking you to stop carrying them entirely alone. Confession, to me first, and to a trusted person when appropriate, is not about earning forgiveness you do not already have. It is about breaking the isolating power that secrecy gives to shame. The things you have hidden the longest often have the strongest grip on you, precisely because they have never been brought into the light where truth can actually touch them. The second step is learning to distinguish between conviction and condemnation in the moment they arise, because they can feel similar, but they function completely differently. Conviction says, "This thing you did was wrong, and I love you, and I want to help you grow beyond it." Condemnation says, "You are wrong, you are bad, you are disqualified, there is no point in trying." When you feel that internal accusation rising, I want you to ask, is this leading me, toward grace, toward growth? Or is it leading me toward isolation, toward hiding, toward despair? Conviction always leads toward relationship. Condemnation always leads toward distance. Learning to recognize which voice you are hearing is one of the most important skills in walking free from shame. The third step is actively, repeatedly, deliberately replacing the shame narrative with the truth narrative, because old patterns of thought do not disappear simply because you have decided intellectually that they are false. Every time the old accusation rises, "You are disqualified, you do not deserve this," eventually they will see who you really are. I am asking you to consciously and verbally counter it with truth. I am forgiven. I am loved. I am not defined by my past. This is not denial. This is not pretending the past did not happen. It is choosing, again and again, to let the truth have the final word instead of the lie, even when the lie feels more familiar and more believable in the moment. The fourth step is allowing yourself to receive good things without sabotaging them. Shame has a way of making people uncomfortable with blessing, undeserving of joy, suspicious of love when it finally arrives. I want you to notice the moments when you catch yourself pulling back from something good, a compliment you deflect, a kindness you cannot fully receive, a relationship you find yourself sabotaging right when it starts to go well, and recognize those moments as shame's fingerprints. Practice staying present in good moments instead of fleeing from them. Practice saying thank you instead of immediately listing reasons why you do not deserve the kindness. This is not arrogance. It is the practice of believing that I have already qualified you for good things, and acting accordingly. The fifth step is allowing your story, eventually in your own timing, in the way I lead you, to become useful to someone else. Not because you owe the world an explanation, but because one of the most powerful things I do with shame, once it has been fully healed, is transform it into a source of compassion and ministry to others who are still trapped in their own version of it. The very thing you have been most ashamed of often becomes, in my hands, the very thing that allows you to reach someone else who feels utterly alone in their own hidden struggle. This does not happen on a forced timeline, and I am not asking you to share before you are ready. But I want you to know that nothing about your story, including the parts you are most ashamed of, is wasted in my hands. My beloved child, I want to speak now about the future that is still available to you, because shame has likely convinced you that whatever good plan I once had for your life has been forfeited by your failures or by what was done to you. I want to dismantle that belief completely and replace it with the truth. My plans for you have not changed. Not by a single degree. The call I placed on your life before you were even formed in the womb is still in effect. Your past, whatever it contains, has not disqualified you from the purpose I have for your future. I want you to consider the men and women throughout history who carried profound shame and who I used anyway. Not despite their shame, but often because of how their freedom from it equipped them to help others. The woman caught in adultery, dragged before me by an accusing crowd, expecting condemnation and receiving the words, "Neither do I condemn you, go and sin no more." The woman at the well, living in a pattern of relationships that had left her isolated and ashamed, who became one of the first evangelists, running back to her town to tell everyone about the one who told her everything she ever did and loved her anyway. These were not exceptions to how I work. They were demonstrations of exactly how I work. I specialize in taking shame and transforming it into testimony. I want to speak now to the specific fear that many of you carry, that even if I have forgiven you, the consequences of your past will follow you forever, that there is no real fresh start, that you will always be defined in some practical way by what happened. I want to be honest with you. Some consequences are real, and some relationships and circumstances may never look the way they would have without the failure or the wound in your story. I am not promising you that every practical consequence disappears, but I am promising you that the consequences do not have the final word over your worth, your purpose, or your future joy. I am the God who redeems. I do not simply forgive and then leave you to manage the wreckage alone. I actively work in the aftermath of your story to bring beauty out of what was broken, to use even the hardest chapters for purposes you cannot currently imagine. I am speaking a new identity over you right now, my child, one that has nothing to do with your past and everything to do with my declaration over you. You are not what you did. You are not what was done to you. You are not the addiction, the affair, the abuse, the failure, the secret you have carried for years. You are my beloved. You are forgiven, fully and completely. You are clean, not because you cleaned yourself up, but because I have made you clean. You are qualified, not by your performance but by my grace. You are called, and that calling has never been revoked, not for a single moment, regardless of what you have walked through. I want to release you now from the prison of self-punishment you have been living in, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades. The internal sentence you have been serving, believing that ongoing self-condemnation is somehow required, somehow appropriate, somehow the price you must continue paying for what happened. I am ending that sentence today. I already paid the price. There is nothing left for you to pay. The only appropriate response to a debt that has already been settled in full is gratitude and freedom, not continued punishment for a crime that has already been forgiven and forgotten by the one with the authority to forgive it. So I am asking you, my beloved child, to walk out of this message differently than you walked in. Not carrying the same weight. Not rehearsing the same accusations. Not believing the same lie that you are somehow the exception to grace. I am asking you to let the fall away, not because the past did not happen, not because it did not matter, but because I have already dealt with it completely, and continuing to carry it adds nothing except unnecessary suffering to a story that I have already redeemed. You are free. Not eventually. Not once you have proven yourself further. Now. Today. In this moment. You are free. Lift your head, my child. Stop hiding in the shadows where shame has kept you. Step into the light of my presence, not because you have earned the right to be there, but because I have already made a way for you. I am not ashamed of you. I have never been ashamed of you. And the day is coming, perhaps it is already here, when you will look back on this season of shame and see it not as the defining chapter of your life, but as the very place where my grace met you most powerfully and set you free for everything that was still to come.